The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
We're on an odd one. Elaine does the odd ones because she's odd.
Right, thank you for that, Julia. There's nothing like a warm welcome. So, hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 3. I'm Elaine.
And I'm Julia.
And I've got to make sure that today, Julia, I look straight ahead rather than at you to my right.
That's difficult, isn't it? Because it's like hearing a little sound in my left ear and I can't work out what it is and I can't react to your face or anything. So, can we change seats, Gareth? No, shaking his head already.
Shaking his head. Right then. So, for those of you who know it already, this is not an exam, but this is how we start. So, anybody new might not know this, Julia. So, do you know it?
It's Facebook, Instagram and Kiss. Twitter.
No, not Kiss. Twitter.
Oh, X.
It's cross, isn't it?
At Potty Plotters.
Yeah.
TikTok at The Potty Plotters. Email us naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk or check out our website pottyplotters.uk.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Coming up today then, well, we've got a chat with Simon Bacon, who is a plantsman, and I'll tell you what, he does know his stuff. I don't like to say that very often about too many guests, but he does, and that's why we've got him, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's already started abusing us in the background, so that's good. We like him already.
Right then, and besides that, we're going to look again at some sweet peas, and I've got loads of them in front of me. Yeah. We're going to do a compare.com or something similar, and we're going to talk about peppers and heat mats as well. Why do we bother with all that? Because we might as well just get on with it, aren't we?
Well, we're going to talk about that later, so don't preempt yourself. We've got that we build people up. Remember, it's kind of the teaser.
Oh, right, okay.
We've not done any recipes or hints and tips for a while, Elaine, so I'm sure you must have some kind of hint or tip going.
It's like rules, isn't it, in my language? But yes, here's one that I did earlier. If it is that you want to protect your plant pots at this time of year that you've perhaps planted with spring bulbs, then why not turn upside down a colander? And that will keep everything out. Believe you me, it's kept the mice out of my greenhouse on the plant pot itself, and I'm going to send a little photograph. You can see how well it's worked.
Right, and when you finish with that, when the bulbs are through, just another suggestion, you could turn the colander upside down and make it into a hanging basket.
That's what I'll do.
Hints and tips for shortcuts to success. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
So before we get on to the sweet peas and chitting potatoes, we do chit our sweet peas as well, but that's another episode, isn't it, Elaine?
Yeah.
Anyway, you might have recently read about all these new tariffs and paperwork about importing fresh fruit and vegetables into the country and how that's going to impact on prices.
And it's I think it's inclusive of flowers as well.
Yeah.
So it will make a massive difference, I'm sure, not only to the people who are bringing them into the country, but people like us who are buying stuff and people out there who are listening to it. So why not start now? It is the month February to have a go at growing your own. You might find that it's cheaper and it's certainly more exciting.
If you'd like Elaine and Julia to come to a talk for your group, get in touch. naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk.
Last year, Julia, we talked about sweet peas, and yet again, it's that time of year to talk more about them. Now, if you remember, we got them going and we got them chitting early, and that was by simply using a takeaway container. We put paper on the bottom, wet it, sprinkled the seeds on the top, put another wet piece of paper on the top of that, clipped the lid to, and then left it. And after 4 or 5 days, not only had they started to chip, but they actually started to physically grow. So then you take the paper off and then pop them into compost. Now, I've done that. And here's an example I grew earlier. Now, what I've done, because they grew so fast and so leggy, what I've done is I've snipped them off. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's not very good.
No, it's not.
No. Well, I'm thinking it's not very good either. However, they are continuing to grow. So what I needed to do with these is move them outside because I've grown them too quickly, that's possible.
You have. Have they been too close to a heat source in the window?
They've been in the window, which is quite warm. It's the warmest place in our house, sitting in a window nowadays. Are you still on that tariff? by the way?
No, that's gone now.
Oh, right,
Now I'm paying
okay.
full whack, so don't you be expecting me to do the dehydrating this year. But
yeah, you can tell though, can't you?
Yeah.
They've grown too quickly. So I'm keeping them going, but I have moved them now to a cold room, which is every other place that we sit, and hopefully that will slow them down. If I thought about it, I could put them in the greenhouse. They'd be fine outside.
yeah, well, this although we're doing this audio, I think Gareth might be videoing this, and a bit of show and tell. I have got some that I pre-chitted here, but I grew them on in the greenhouse. So I did them exactly the same time as you, and these have taken a much slower growth to them, but look, they're looking much happier and healthier there, Elaine.
Yeah, I like them. And it'll be interesting to see how they grow finally when it comes to the next few months, and certainly in May when perhaps we've put them into the barrels which we're going to be planting them into, and you're going to put some into the polytunnel as well, aren't you?
I am, and I've already got some well ahead of the game here.
Now, when did you plant these?
Now, can you remember we went to see Keith Fern in Christ?
Yes.
And Keith pulled me to one side and said, "You're doing your sweet peas wrong. You should be planting them in October." So that is what I did, and I've planted the sweet peas in October. I didn't pre-soak them or anything, and I just popped them into these root trainers because I'd got them for free. So I thought, well, why
nice
not?
one.
And they're looking really, really healthy and happy. Now, I am going to plant these in the polytunnel.
Yeah.
The only problem that I've experienced with them, and it is the only problem, is the fact that I left them down on the allotment, and because we got flooded and because of all that wind and everything, I never got down for a couple of days. And guess who found some of the sweet peas?
Mice.
The mice.
Did they?
Yeah, so the mice nipped a few of them, but on the whole, most of them I managed to keep and get going again. So that's the only downside, I think, to doing it over the winter, is that you've got to protect them and look after them a bit more.
So, for people who are listening to this now in February, it's too late to go backwards into October. That's something for us to think about this next year. This year, not this next year, because that would make it 2025. And I'm not very good at maths. But instead, what we'll do is we'll tell people about planting them like this, which is simply popping them into multi-purpose compost, like we were talking about before, and then slowing them down by putting them and growing them outside in the greenhouse, or even outside if you haven't got a greenhouse.
Yeah. You don't want them to grow tall and leggy like yours.
Nothing wrong with tall and leggy, Julia. You're being tall and leggyists, aren't you?
I think if you put them out in the polytunnel or in the ground, they would die, my friend.
It's called an experiment, not a mistake. Right then, so you're going to put these in the polytunnel. When are you going to do that?
Very soon, actually.
What, today?
Maybe today, maybe tomorrow.
Oh.
They're ready to go in. They're ready to come out of the root trainers. And I have dug over an area of the dig side of the polytunnel, and they'll happily get going. The only thing I need to make sure of, there's no holes that the mice can get in.
Okay.
There's still a little bit, well, they potentially could get nipped off by the mice.
So we'll update people next time we're on and let them know how you're going on with them. Smash him.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Next thing is we're going to talk about chitting potatoes. Now, I know that we talked about it on Series 1 or Season 1. Is that right? Oh, yeah, it's getting nasty now. Look at him. Is it season or season? Right, Season 1. But I'm just going to go over it, Julia, for people perhaps who don't know what on earth we're talking about.
I don't know what on earth we're talking about, but go on.
Right then, so we've got some first early potatoes here. Now, don't get tangled up on what's a first early, what's a main crop, what's a second early. Don't worry about it. But we've got some potatoes, seed potatoes here, and these are Winston. Now, you've chosen Winston. Is that for a reason, Julia?
Well, I actually went in to buy some Casablanca, but I couldn't get any Casablanca, and they said, try Winston, it's very like Casablanca, so that's why I've got Winston.
It's a good job it wasn't shoe polish, because you'd come out with anything, wouldn't you? Let's face it. Right then.
I'm a salesman's dream, I am.
Right, next thing is I've got this net, and seed potatoes generally are sold in nets in 2 kilogram packs, and now I will say these are lovely taters. How do you know a lovely tater from a bad one?
Well, a bad one it might be a bit squishy.
Yeah.
It might look a bit furry on the outside. It might look like it's got some kind of fungus on it. It might be weeping some kind of stuff out of it. I don't know what to call it, but it might be weeping.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want a nice healthy one. You want to look at it and think, well, I might eat that.
These are nice in that they are clean, they're dry, they've not already started to sprout, so sprouting. So their little buds are still covered. There's nothing at all. They're lovely.
Like the ones that you find at the back of your cupboard that have got long white sprouts on them.
Yeah.
Sprouts. Yeah.
We're not having them.
No, okay.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
We're just going to go for these, because how much were they?
I think they were about £4.
Okay, so for 2 kilos, that's £1 for a kilo. Yeah, that works out quite reasonable, whatever a kilo is.
£2 a kilo, Elaine.
Right.
Simple math.
Okay then. So not everybody wants loads of taters, and I don't. And it's not good, is it, when your producer's laughing and now we're having to walk away.
Yeah. Well, the reason I got these first earlies was because some of them are going to go in the polytunnel, and of course, when the first earlies come out, the chip pan comes out. So I obviously had to get a 2 kilogram bag for that reason.
That's a good idea. It's thinking of others at all times. So all that we're going to do then is I've got my recycling bag here, one of them. And
your husband's glad you bought one bag less in the house.
Oh, you know how it is. Collect it all year. Don't throw that away. I need it. That's how it goes. So these are just the egg boxes. Don't throw those away. And all that you do is literally oh, look at that. I've got a ladybird in there.
Aww.
Oh. Anyway, so stand your potato in the egg box just like you would an egg.
So that's a good size seed potato, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because it's about the size of an egg.
Yeah.
So.
And there's loads of them if you have a look in here, Julia. Look at that. They're all lovely. Now, what you'll notice is I am actually putting them one stop away from each other, and I'm doing that so they don't touch each other, because if one does happen to go bad, we don't want it to infect all the others.
No.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this in a cool room and make sure, look at that ladybird, it's climbed on me now. Quite understandable.
You've obviously got aphids.
Right then, so all I'm going to do is keep that in a cool room in the light, towards the light, but make sure it doesn't get too warm, and make sure they don't get frosted, because if they get frosted, I can tell you now, they will simply rot. I've listed for today, Julia, myths and assumptions around allotmenting, because I'm not a big fan and I'm not a very big user of all of the social media stuff. But when I do look at it, I have to shut some of it down simply because I get a bit cross. I get cross because of things that people put that aren't true, and also the fact that we're all in different locations of the world. So at this time of year, some people will be setting off, for instance, their squashes and pumpkins. Now, unless you're Hazel Chambers and you're in Australia, then that's really not a wise thing to do.
No. I think there's a panic that spreads over the whole of social media when everyone goes, I'm planting this, I'm planting that. And unless you've got specific conditions or your location is very warm, actually don't do it. Hold back, because a plant will always catch up if you plant it later. Whereas if you go too early, all it's going to do is struggle, and you're going to have to really nurture it, or it's going to die.
So, for instance, I repeatedly see things about toilet rolls, empty toilet rolls, and one of them is about broad beans. So I'm going to talk about that, because broad beans are some of the first beans that we plant. Now then, if you're going to plant into an empty toilet roll holder, all I'm going to do is ask you to think about this. Have you actually tried to rip one? If you haven't, how does a broad bean feel trying to escape? Because eventually that broad bean will want to grow and will want to get out of that toilet roll. But how do they? Because if you water it too much, you'll rot the bean, and if you don't water it enough, it won't be able to get out.
No.
You haven't thought about it, have you? Looking at me like,
what?
I've
thought about it, and I've seen it, and I've tried it, and like you say, the what I found when I've tried that method is that the broad bean, and any bean that I've done it with, have been quite stunted, because the roots haven't had room to stretch out and break through the toilet roll properly.
Yeah, so I would steer away from them, unless it is that before you plant the broad bean, you cut down the toilet roll and take the toilet roll off. A lot of the toilet roll holders, I don't know if you know, but actually they've got like a covering on the inside that it's not plastic, but I don't know what it is. But honestly, it's dead hard to escape. If I'd got one up here, I'd make you have a go at it now. And Gareth's looking round as if we're going to find one in the community polytunnel. I'm not really sure, but we'll think about that, Gareth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And also it's about planting anything in these toilet rolls. Honestly, think very carefully about how the plant is going to get out of it. And maybe we do it because everybody else is and we don't think long and hard.
Do you think newspaper's better? Making newspaper
perfect.
pots?
Yeah, because that's easy to actually rot down, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you wet newspaper, it doesn't take long before it disappears.
Yeah.
But personally speaking, I'd just cut all of that out and just put it straight into the soil when we get to that stage.
And I'm just looking here at this egg box because you've listed eggshells as something to talk about.
Yeah, eggshells are another myth. If you think that slugs are not going to be bothered by the odd eggshell that you've crushed up, you've diligently crushed up, be mistaken. It's not going to happen because the majority of your slugs will come from underneath, not over the top.
Yeah.
Funny old world, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there have been trials of different things and it wasn't proven to make that much difference. And certainly when we've tried it, it's not made any difference.
So I would say keep off them as well, unless it is that you want to do it to keep other creatures off your allotment, such as cats. Now then, how do you keep cats off your allotment, Julia?
Well, you can buy that stuff in a box, or you could go to the zoo and get some lion poo.
Lion raw?
Honestly, there's something called lion raw, or it's called raw lion.
Gareth's indicating that he's got a gun.
That's not very nice.
Well,
I'm a
anyway.
cat lover. Stop it, Gareth.
It's not nice.
No,
okay.
but cats don't like, apparently don't like bigger cats' doo-doos. So that might be good, although that's quite hard to get hold of, and I'm not going in there to scoop it up after them. So, I mean, one thing, being a cat owner, parent, one thing I do know that they don't like is citrus. So if you were to put, say, citrus peel around something that you want to protect from the cats, I wouldn't have thought they'd want to go on your beds very much.
Okay, and what I am going to do very shortly, because a cat has left me a great big present this morning.
Are you sure it was the cat and not the fox? Are you blaming cats?
I am blaming cats by the colour of it. I'm not saying that I'm doing an analysis, but I'm telling you it's a cat.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go back to what my dad used to do, which was using knitting needles and wool or nylon. And all that you do...
Knit it a coat?
Yeah. No, what you do is you tie the string or the nylon, whatever it is, to one of your knitting needles, put it into the ground, the area that you've dug over or that you're going to be used, or for instance you put bulbs in, and then all that you do is like a macrame right across all of that raised bed and that area, and so you end up with just nothing but string all over it. Cat can't get in unless they can do ballet. Tightrope. No, I'm telling you.
Wool, don't you? They play with it.
They won't be playing with this, let me tell you.
Anyway, another myth and well, it's not a myth and assumption actually. Some people do use it, and they use it for good reason. But you often see people talking about going out and buying heat mats and also grow lights. Do we need them, Elaine?
Well, I don't, because I'm big enough, but I've never used a heat mat, and it's funny because Kev Block 2 was talking about buying one the other day. Now, I've seen them, but I don't know how necessarily they're any better than what we've got already in like your conservatory or at home, you know, on the windowsill.
I think if people haven't got windowsills, maybe that they can use and access, maybe it's a good idea, you know, because we use it because it's over the radiator. But I think if you want to get something going and it needs a consistent heat over a period of time, like for saying the antirrhinum seeds that we planted last week, I mean, I've obviously got them in a place where I know they'll germinate and I know those temperatures get up, but they need quite a high temperature to get them going and consistently, as do the aubergines and the peppers and things like that we're talking about. So it's about really... They're not necessary, but sometimes they can help depending on your conditions that you've got.
Have you tried putting newspaper I know that's a thing that a lot of people don't have anymore. Have you tried putting newspaper underneath the pots that you're growing them in?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Because that will keep them warm.
Yeah.
That's another thing cats like, isn't it?
They do. And grow lights, Elaine. grow lights, they're all over the internet this year. Someone must be knocking them out very cheaply. That's all I can think. But there are certain circumstances when I think there are an advantage.
Cannabis.
Oh, okay.
Just saying. I've seen that on the telly. It must be true.
But as a general rule, we've never had to use them because, again, we put things on the windowsill and we make sure that we turn the plants round every day so that the plants aren't stretching to the light. The purpose of the grow light is for things to kind of grow at a reasonable pace towards the grow light. But it's not necessary, is it?
Well, I don't think so, because we're trying to keep costs down.
Yeah.
So by buying all these fandangled things, we're using electricity, etc., all over again. So just have a go this year and see what happens.
I mean, I'd say to listeners, if you have got seedlings, put them as close to the light source as possible. Don't put them over the far side of your room, because they are really going to stretch towards the light then. So it's a bit of common sense, but it's about your own conditions really, but it's not necessary.
Give it a go.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
We are thrilled, honoured, and any other big word like that anyway, to say welcome to Simon the Plantzzman, Simon Bacon. Certainly a person who knows a thing or two about trees. That's why we've got him here, isn't it?
Yes. Simon, it's lovely to see you here. Tell us about yourself and tell us about your horticultural history.
Thanks for having me today, ladies. I'm Simon the Plantzzman. I've worked in horticulture for probably 35 years now, and I worked for 30 years at a local nursery growing plants of all different sorts, from bedding plants right through to fruit trees, which we're going to be talking about today. Recently, having left that employment, I've become Simon the Plantzzman, so I now go around maintaining people's gardens, planting schemes, selling plants, as a little bit of a broadening of my horticultural enterprise, really.
In the 35 years then, Simon, you must have planted and grown and ordered and given and bought lots and lots of different, trees, I was going to say, including me, because you've sold some to me as well. I think I've been had. Yeah, really? Yeah. So what is the difference between, at this time of year, a bare-rooted tree that we keep telling everybody to buy or one in a plant pot?
Well, the main reason for buying bare root, obviously you've got quite a good financial saving. It gives you a bigger range of fruit to be looking at as well, and easier to source online for people who want to shop online. The tree's sort of younger usually, but it gives you some more training options as well. And because it's not in a pot, you are very limited on the time of the year that you can buy, so obviously only in the dormant months. Not so many places sell them as well these days, bare root, so you often end up buying a pot grown tree, which for a lot of people is what they're looking for, because they've got an established root system in a pot grown tree, and usually a more mature specimen to start off with, and everybody's in a rush to pick the first plums. So
you are, aren't you, Elaine?
I like to get my hands on plums. Indeed. So when you actually, I look at a tree and I normally look at the shape of them. I don't really know very much about them. But when we have bought trees in the past from you, and when you have a look in magazines, etc., they've got this fandangled system, language thing, like a coding. What's that all about?
Well, that's usually referring to rootstock. Which is eventually what limits the size of your tree, impacts on vigour and such like. So obviously with your apples, you've got the M series of rootstocks, so M27, M9, M26, MM106 and upwards.
I think I've driven on them.
Yeah, it sounds like a motorway system, doesn't it?
Is that what we should be looking for? So a lot of allotment sites will ask us only to plant dwarf stock. Are those the M's that we should be looking for? Yeah,
M27 and M9 are probably your dwarfest trees that are commonly sold. Semi-dwarf would be M26, which would give you a tree maybe up to 10 foot, and you could restrict it below that. You'd have to probably work with your allotment society to find out what your ultimate heights are that you can grow. And also, could you train those trees as an espalier instead and sort of bend the rules a little bit on height by growing a more vigorous stock but out instead of up? That would again be something you'd have to probably identify with the allotment society that you're that you're on. So yeah, I mean, then you go into like your plums and all of your cherries and things like that. Always best to try and go for a dwarf stock if you can, especially with cherries, because you're going to have to be netting them to stop every bird in the neighbourhood. Maybe that's where cats come in. It might keep your birds away from your cherries. But so you'd be looking at probably Giselle 5 for a cherry. And with plums, there's Pixie root stocks. VVA1 may well have sort of superseded Pixie now. You do see some very dwarf fruit offered, especially at garden centres these days. It's a bit of a difficult one as to work out if that's a route you should go down, because if you make a tree too dwarf, you're going to be impacting on plant health, maybe cropping ability. And I think some of the heights that are quoted are a little bit of fantasy as well at times, just playing on people aiming for a little dwarf tree that you're probably not really going to get.
Is that like a micro pig?
Can you remember people were selling them and then they ended up with giant fat pigs?
I saw a plum tree recently and it said it grew a metre high, but you could see it had grown 40 centimetres in one growing season. So unless it knew it could only grow another 60 centimetres, the reality was going to give you
not very good then, is it?
So and you need more experience from maintaining a tree when it's small, because it usually means more summer pruning to maintain the overall structure. But if you've got an allotment where you're limited on size, then I guess work with the allotment society to identify ultimate heights that are allowed, and then see if you can bend the rules by training a tree as an espalier. Or just do as you're told, I suppose.
Yeah, that's all then.
Don't
She
think
raises
so.
an eyebrow.
No.
So are dwarf trees less productive or more productive than...
They can be very productive because they're not so interested in actual growing. So they'll often put more blossom growth out, but it's finding that balance where if you overcrop, you just end up with little plums. And, so sometimes you have to thin your fruit more, keep an eye more on the watering and feeding. Right. But they can be a very productive plant, because as I say, they're not looking to put lots of growth out.
And is there a big price difference generally then between those in pots and those that are bare rooted?
There's can be a big difference in the price of just the dwarf compared to normal. The more the dwarf root stocks, there's always a price premium on those. And we always found, like where I used to work, that you were always paying a premium. And there's a big premium difference in bare root or pot grown, because, a bare root tree has been lifted out of a field and shipped direct to you, or, to a garden centre for you to buy. Whereas a potted tree's maybe been grown by the grower for 2 or 3 years. So you're paying for their experience and their training ability. So, but equally you're getting so much more for your money, and you've got an established root system you don't have to worry about. If you're buying a bare root, you might have a massive top but very little bottom. And
hello.
And you've got to balance the tree up by pruning a lot off of what you've just bought, and you haven't got an established root system, so you're having to be more careful on the establishment, especially for the first year while the tree roots out, because it's having a bit of a midlife crisis already by not having all of its roots that it would have had when it was in the field. But from experience, as long as you're careful, it's surprising how little root a tree, because the plant doesn't want to die, it wants to grow. So as long as you balance it up by pruning the crown back, which you'll be doing to get a nice branch system anyway, you've just got to chop off maybe 50% of what you've just bought at times. But that loss gives you a gain further down the line.
Do you think that, a lot of supermarkets now sell trees, and we are getting lots of people speak to us about the trees that are in the supermarkets. Are they any good? What's your experience of those?
I did have a customer once who bought an apple from a well-known supermarket chain, and when it grew it was a damson, which was interesting. When I look at the trees, and noting the price, which is usually very low.
Yeah, very.
And noting the cost of what a dwarf rootstock is.
Yeah.
And they often don't say what the rootstock is on the product. I would be very wary of buying such trees. They may be more suitable for home gardens or planting up in community orchards, but I personally can't see that some of the trees that are being sold can be on the rootstocks, which are really dwarf. So that could be a bit of an issue for people buying, because if you can't identify the rootstock, you don't know what you're planting on your allotment, do you? I don't know whether you can get away with just being getting away with that.
if you go beyond the height that's required, they would just expect you to chop it down to that height.
Yeah.
So, and you're not going to get the productivity then, are
No.
you?
But I mean, if you're starting out with a young tree, especially as a bare root, where you might buy just a maiden, if you know you've got a target height, then just start your trunk and your branch system lower.
Right.
Don't let it grow to a shoulder height.
Before you do something
with it. I mean, trees often these days start at hip height, and I realise everybody's hips can be at different heights, especially between you two of you. Yes, just factor in your ultimate height and don't prune it. Don't wait until it gets to the height you're aiming for. Start pruning it as a youngster and gradually get to that height with a better shaped tree.
And what about people who buy apple trees or crab apples, like I've done before, to put in pots? Because again, not everybody's got an allotment, and maybe they just want to put something into a pot and then keep it on the garden or on the balcony even.
Yeah, you can quite happily containerise apples and crab apples, ideally on a dwarf or rootstock. That containerisation does reduce the vigour of the tree and helps to restrict it for some time. You may end up in sort of a half whiskey barrel. So,
I'd like to end up in a whiskey barrel.
I was just going to say,
in the water barrel.
I was going to say, Elaine, you could cut one of yours open and get two trees in, couldn't you? Yeah. There's nothing to stop you from doing that at all. But as I say, where you can, you're going to have to be pruning to, and apples and crabs lend themselves very well to that, because you can do an awful lot of summer pruning, sort of in late summer. To keep it really restricted. It might mean you're cutting off 2 or 3 feet of growth, but by doing so, then you're making blossom growth, which gives you more flowers and fruit.
So if people want to know more about growing on an allotment, or if it is that they're thinking of a community orchard or something, how can they get hold of you, Simon?
Well, they could contact me via my website, which is plantzman.com, or you could drop me an email at plantzman@aol.com. They can follow me on Facebook as well at Simon the Plantzzman.
Right then, so back at it, Julia, planning. Now, you know that I'm rehashing my, half of my plot. It's about killing me in the process,
I
but
have noticed,
it is the right time to be doing it. So I've now got railway sleepers. I'm making some raised beds. I brought my cardboard in, but I'm planning, and also I'm planning what I'm going to plant. It's February. Why should we be doing that at this time of year?
Well, if we're thinking ahead, we're looking at how things are going to fit into the plot. You need to be thinking about watering as well. So I'm looking at things thinking, well, if I put there, they need a lot of watering, and that's a lot of backwards and forwards with the watering can. So, and it's just about giving everything room to grow. So, and as we know, we're going for more flowers this year. So just think the process through. Don't be too keen just to stick it in anywhere, really.
And the other thing is that I've actually cajoled somebody. It's Kev Plot too.
Ooh.
He's got a trailer,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go and get some washed sharp sand.
Oh.
Now then, I've decided to invest in that because there's not many things that don't like sand on this allotment, and with the water being as it is, I thought it will stop the soil getting claggy.
Yeah, don't worry.
No, so that's what I'm going to do. So that is my plan, and I know it's a big investment, but I know that it's going to be worth it overall. And I've also decided I'm going to do 2 whole beds of beetroot.
Goodness me.
Yeah, Gareth is now shaking his head and walking away. But I am, because that is something that is so versatile. I love it. Yeah, he's screwing his face up now as well. But I've decided that's what I'm going to do. And in light of, I think that there is going to be a big, not crisis, but price increase this next year. I'm quite sure. Yeah. You mark my words.
Are you going to become a beetroot baron? Beetroot baron.
Get your beetroot here. Yeah, it'll be something like that.
You could be having such a funny colour by the end of the year if you eat all that beetroot.
You can have white and you can have yellow as well, you know, and stripy.
Oh, I didn't think you were allowed to do those.
Well, Bill thinks, that's my husband, he thinks that they taste different. Actually, if I put a blindfold in, I wouldn't know. Mind you, he doesn't know I'm there or not. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do,
Okay.
planning. What are you doing?
Well, I'm already ahead of the game. So.
Oh, I'll kit you.
Yeah. I've already planned out where things are going.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
So, as we've said, got more flowers. So, I'm going to make sure that they're near the water sources, and also for kind of taking cuttings and things off them. So, and really, I think I'm only going to plant my vegetables in the no-dig beds that I've already
sounds
set
good.
up. Not the ones that I'm currently setting, but I've gone all no-dig.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
Right, well, that's lovely then. Well, I don't know about you, and I noticed that Simon, when he was talking to us, went a funny colour. I think it's all to do with the fact that it's so chuffing hot in here.
Really
We are
is.
in a polytunnel,
Yeah.
in the sunshine, and he looks like he's indicating that he's on fire.
Right.
It's either that or he really is. So I'm going to take my scarf off
Is
now.
that how we give our guests a roasting? Is that we bring them into the polytunnel?
It puts a new light on the word, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Anyway, let's go and get the kettle on.
All right, and let's talk about next time. Next
Oh.
time, what we'll be doing? We'll be doing more of the same. Tra!
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters is an Amberland Media production.